Jesus, the passage of time is just weird. It's never ending. It doesn't feel like it's been 7 years since we crowned Axima Ethica Odine by Enslaved as the album of the year back in 2010. It really doesn't. It feels like it's been like 2 years or 3 years or something. I know, time's been flown the same way as it has been since for, ever. But it just doesn't feel like it's been that long. It doesn't feel like we've talked about multiple releases by the band. And it's weird to be here in 2017 talking about another one, just simply because time marches on. And really, the time that we have been in the second era of Enslaved has certainly marched on. We've reached probably the tail end of our second decade, as some would trace the changeover from pure black and Viking metal over to one that included 3 other Ps. No, not the 3 Is, Kurt Angle. The 3 Ps, psychedelic, post-metal, and prog, can be traced back to Monumention from the late 90s or Below the Lights and Isa from the early 2000s. So what do we have here in 2017? Is this going to follow the mold that we have gotten here in the 20-teens, or is it instead going to be something that's just a little bit different? Now, the first thing that I can say about this album that may immediately give you the answer is that it's a concept album. And you know that if you're going to do a concept album, things have to be handled just a little bit differently. And Storm Sun, which is the very first cutoff of this album, is nearly 11 minutes in length and is tasked with the duty of attempting to get us set into the scene, to get us right where we need to be, to serve as the introduction to the story and then provide us with the things that are necessary, whether it be conflict or whether it be just plot, giving us a setting, giving us everything. And Storm Sun is able to start off with a little bit of that post-metal side, a little bit of that airiness, the thing that really kind of sets things in motion before launching into some of the black metal tones or some of the Viking metal tones, the traditional Enslaved tones, if we really want to say things like that. And whenever that happens, that's great. And we are able to get transformed into the setting. See, typically, whenever you listen to an Enslaved song or even an Enslaved album, you can easily envision yourself on a Viking warship. You can easily envision yourself in battle. But you couldn't really see yourself perhaps just on a plane or somewhere that is, important to an encampment. Oh, and that's exactly what this song's able to do. It's able to set things up. It's able to brew the conflict and present it to you, only instead of it being in the setting of the Vikings, it's going back to the times of mythology. And this song is able to do things even further. The transitions that are on this track are definitely, bar none, some of the best that we've heard from this era of Enslaved. They have led off with a terrific foot. And they've been able to blend the riffs, they've been able to blend the transitions, the songwriting, the craftsmanship on this song is like crafting a warship or crafting a boat. And they have done so to a point where it seems and is perceived to be invincible, even though that may not be the case. It's a song that for its 11 minutes does not feel like 11 minutes. It instead feels like you're getting transported to this world and are now walking among it, learning of the conflict of the day. And the River's Mouth and Sacred Horse are able to continue on this process. We have the River's Mouth cutting the song length in half to only 5 minutes and 13 seconds, but is able to accomplish the same things, only in a more direct Enslaved approach. The things that we've known from the past, 10 to 15 years. However, with Sacred Horse and then going into Axis of the Worlds, the song lengths are starting to increase, and we're starting to see other elements that are starting to factor in. Some of that psychedelic side, some of that prog side. We're hearing these clean vocals that we are familiar with, don't get me wrong, but these are clean vocals that are sounding crisp and better than ever before. They have this sort of tone of very strong power to them, almost as though they're not being spake by a mere vocalist. Instead, it's being used to speak the characters themselves, only all done obviously in the same voice. The way in which this is handled is like an expert storyteller, and it is conveying emotion just as much as it's attempting to further the plot. And we are hearing also some varied tones whenever it comes to pacing. Not everything has that blackened Viking metal approach where we have to be going at a certain sort of mid to aggressive tempo range. Instead, we're getting some things that are being built from the bottom up and are being kept at the low point, being kept very much at a soft range, a soft register, kind of taking things back and it works wonderfully. This is the type of creativity that perhaps we've been begging for a while from this band. They've already been very excellent at doing things their own way, but with this added notch on their, belt right now, they're already showcasing the ability to expand and do it just as well. Then you get into Feathers of Eoth, and oh man, is this ever a highlight going into Hindsight, which is track number 6. These 2 tracks alone are nearly 18 minutes of this album, and you have to remember it's an 8-track affair, so we do have lengthy songs on this disc in order to fulfill its runtime, and both of these songs use that pacing and tone in order to craft wonderful experiences. Feathers of Eoth having a really soft, kind of almost eerie and ominous feel to it, even though it's sort of meant to be a little bit more of the, I don't want to say happy, but a little bit more explorative, a little bit more, look at the overall picture that we're at right now. And in Hindsight, it's a very reflective and almost melancholic song that does have its thrust points, but both of these showcase Enslaved's ability to use post-metal, to use those 3 Ps alongside of the V and the B, which is the Viking and the black metal, in order to really take the genre to a new place. If you thought that Mayhem was the only band that was taking black metal to new places with albums such as Esoteric Warfare, you haven't been paying close enough attention, as a band such as Enslaved has certainly helped to showcase that this is a genre of metal, or a subgenre rather, that has unlimited opportunities and has tons of expansion that has yet to be discovered. And this is an album that may not have necessarily broke new ground, but has instead reinforced the fact that you can do a lot with this subgenre of music, to the point where black metal becomes one of just many adjectives that can be used, and instead you could just call it a terrific metal album. That's exactly what it is. Going into the very last couple of tracks, including What Else Is There, which is the shortest cut on the album at just 4 minutes and 44 seconds, you hear how Enslaved has been able to embrace those 5 elements of their personality. They've brought them together in order to fulfill this conceptual idea, and have been able to do so very well. Now, is the concept necessarily brought together and delivered in a way that feels very linear and feels very, you're very close to it? This isn't the fucking astonishing. I'm just going to throw that out there. This is not the astonishing. This is being presented in a much different way, more so as an omniscient would to to an audience. But it's still one that does something that the astonishing was not able to do. The connection that you feel to this album is very magnetic. It's difficult to put this disc down, and it's difficult not to go on and see it to completion. Even though the longer songs, or the longer runtime, or some of the different branches of the path that you get sometimes whenever they decide to go into one of those Ps, the post-metal or whatever, it might seem a little bit off-putting, either that or you might thirst for one side more than the other. It's so well balanced and so well justified, and crafts emotion so well. Things that you might not have expected Enslaved to be really capable of doing with power, that you are just transfixed and want to continue. There's not a lot wrong with this album at all. There really is not. And that's why I mentioned 2010. Because this is an album that I listened to and had to listen to again, and then again, and then again. And I kind of want to listen to it again after I, hit the stop button. It's hard for me to put this down. This is not so much an obsession so much as it's just an album that oozes replayability and has a terrific vision that was executed very well. I mentioned 2010 because this album is a 28 out of 30, which puts it right now in elite company. But of course, we still have 2 months left of 2017. Is it going to have the power? Is it going to have the replayability? Is it going to have the mystique? Is it going to have the myth just oozing about it in order to get it to Album of the Year? Is it going to be able to surpass such names such as Threshold or Enslaved or Havoc? Does it have that lasting legend behind it? We don't know just yet, but as of right now, that 28 out of 30, wow. It's another very impressive point, considering Enslaved has shed the wings of their second generation and now hopefully have entered a third, where we can expect this type of massive creativity on such a large scale with each subsequent release. I want to know what you thought about E by Enslaved. Let me know in the comments below. I'm coverkillernation, and I hope to see you guys not only next time for the next review, but also whenever we do the streams right here on YouTube, or we're going to be moving over to Twitch. So there's going to be a link down below in the description box for you to get followed up over on Twitch. I hope that you will do that, and you will join us where we talk music and life and just about everything in between. We may be talking about this album the next time that we stream. So definitely pop on over, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.